What if the cage you have been desperately trying to escape is not a cage at all, but a room you have been standing in with the door wide open behind you? And the reason you cannot leave is not because you are trapped, but because you have become so accustomed to the dim light of your own suffering, that the brightness of freedom feels like blindness. And the blindness is not a punishment, it is a transition that requires you to trust what you cannot see, to believe in a world that exists beyond the walls you have memorized, to take a step backwards into a void that you have been told is dangerous. But the void is not dangerous. The void is the mother of all creation. The void is the space where new galaxies are born. And you have been shrinking from the void because you have been taught that emptiness is loss. But emptiness is not loss. Emptiness is potential. Emptiness is the canvas upon which the masterpiece of your life is waiting to be painted, and the brush is in your hand, the paint is in your heart, and the canvas is the infinite, terrifying, and glorious unknown. And today we are going to stop running from the unknown. We are going to stop clinging to the familiar shadows. We are going to turn around. We are going to face the open door. And we are going to walk through it, not because we are brave, but because we are tired of being prisoners of our own fear. The first story is a story of a woman who lived in a house of glass, a house where every wall was transparent, and she could see the whole world from her windows. But the world could also see her, and she was exposed, she was vulnerable, she was terrified of being seen. And she spent her days hiding in the corners, covering the windows with curtains. But the curtains were transparent too, because the glass was not glass. It was a metaphor for the illusion of privacy, the illusion of control, and she was miserable, she was exhausted, she was desperate for a room that was hidden, a room that was hers alone. And one day, a traveler came to the house, a traveler who said, "You've been hiding in a house of glass, but the glass is not a prison. It is a mirror that shows you the truth. And the truth is that you are afraid of being seen. But the being seen is not the danger. The danger is the hiding. The hiding is the death, and the death is the life you are living. And the life you are living is the cage, and the cage is the glass, and the glass is the fear, and the fear is the key, and the key is the turning, and the turning is the freedom." And the woman was silent, and she stopped hiding. She started standing in the center of the glass house. She let the world see her, and she was terrified, but she was also free. Because the terror was not the enemy. The terror was the door, and the door was the opening, and the opening was the life. The second story is a story of a man who had a treasure chest, a chest that was locked, a chest that he had been carrying on his back for his entire life, and the chest was heavy. It was burdensome. It was a weight that bent his spine and slowed his steps. But he would not put it down. He would not open it, because he was afraid of what was inside. Afraid that the treasure was not treasure. Afraid that it was a curse. Afraid that it was the source of all his pain. And he was exhausted. He was depleted. He was ready to collapse, and one day he met a child who said, "Why do you carry that chest? Why do you not open it?" And the man said, "I am afraid of what is inside. I am afraid of the truth." And the child said, "The truth is not the enemy. The truth is the friend, and the friend is the freedom. And the freedom is the opening, and the opening is the light, and the light is the life, and the life is the treasure. And the treasure is not in the chest, the treasure is in the opening. The opening is the moment is the choice, and the choice is the freedom." And the man was silent, and he put down the chest and he opened it, and inside the chest was not a curse, not a treasure, not a secret. It was empty, it was void, it was the potential for everything. And he wept not from loss, but from relief, because he had been carrying the fear of the unknown. And the unknown was not a monster, it was a blank page, and the blank page was the beginning of a life that was not burdened by the weight of the past, but free to create the future. The third story is a story of a king who was obsessed with the moon. He spent every night staring at it. He built telescopes, he studied its phases, he worshipped its beauty. and he was consumed by a desire to possess it, to own it, to make it his, and he ordered his subjects to build a tower that would reach the moon, a tower of stone and iron and ambition. And they built it. They built it for years. They sacrificed everything, and the tower grew and grew and grew, and it reached the clouds. But it did not reach the moon, because the moon was not a thing to be possessed. It was a presence to be appreciated, and the king was furious. He was devastated. He was ready to destroy the tower, but then he looked at the moon, and he saw that it was beautiful not because it was his, but because it was not his, because it was free, because it was a reminder that some things are beyond our grasp, and the grasping is the prison, and the releasing is the freedom, and the freedom is the peace, and the peace is the life, and the twist is that he did not destroy the tower, he turned it into an observatory, a place where people could come and appreciate the moon, not possess it. And he said, the moon was a dream. The dream was a lesson, and the lesson was that the beauty is not in the owning. The beauty is in the beholding, and the beholding is the freedom, and the freedom is the life. The fourth story is a story of a woman who was the most brilliant scientist in the world. She had solved equations that had baffled the greatest minds she had discovered, laws that governed the universe, and she was celebrated. She was revered. She was the master of the known, but she was also a prisoner because she was terrified of the unknown, terrified of the mysteries that could not be explained, terrified of the chaos that defied her equations. And she spent her life trying to eliminate the unknown, to reduce the universe to a formula to make everything predictable. And she was successful. She was the queen of order, but she was also hollow, because the order was a cage that excluded the wonder, the mystery, the awe of the inexplicable. And one day she met a child who was not interested in equations, a child who was playing in the mud, and the scientist said, "What are you doing that is not science, that is chaos, that is disorder?" And the child said, "It is life, it is the mud, it is the mess, it is the mystery, and you have been so focused on the order that you have forgotten the mystery. And the mystery is the source, and the source is the wonder, and the wonder is the life." And the scientist was silent, and she put down her equations, and she sat in the mud, and she played, and she discovered that the mud was not chaos, it was creation. It was the beginning of all things, and the twist is that she did not abandon science. She integrated the mystery. She started asking questions that had no answers, and the questions became her new passion, a passion for the unknown. And she said, the known was a cage, the unknown is the freedom, and the freedom is the wonder, and the wonder is the life. The fifth story is a story of the man who was the greatest chef in the world. He could create dishes that were masterpieces, that were works of art, that were the height of culinary perfection, and he was famous. He was respected. He was the king of the kitchen, but he was also a prisoner because he was terrified of simplicity, terrified of the ordinary, terrified of the humble meal, and he spent his life creating complexity, layering flavors, constructing towers of taste, and he was successful. He was the master of the complex, but he was also empty because the complexity was a mask that hid the simple truth. The truth that food is not about the technique, it is about the nourishment, the connection, the love. And one day he met a grandmother who cooked a simple soup, a soup that had only 3 ingredients, and he tasted it, and he wept because the soup was perfect. It was not complex. It was not elaborate. It was simply true. And he said, "How do you do it? How do you create such perfection with so little?" And the grandmother said, "I do not create. I release the flavor of the ingredients. I release the love of the cooking. I release the intention of the meal, and the release is the perfection. The release is the truth. The truth is the simplicity, and the simplicity is the freedom." And the man was silent, and he started cooking simple meals that were not masterpieces, meals that were nourishing, meals that were true. And the twist is that he did not lose his fame. He gained a new kind of fame, a fame that was not based on complexity, but on connection. And he said, the complexity was a cage, the simplicity is the key, and the key is the truth, and the truth is the love, and the love is the life. The sixth story is a story of a king who was the most powerful ruler in the world. He had conquered nations, he had amassed wealth, he had built a dynasty that would last 1,000 years. And he was proud, he was arrogant, he was invincible, but he was also a prisoner because he was terrified of weakness, terrified of vulnerability, terrified of the fragility of life. And he spent his life building walls, armoring himself, protecting himself from the softness of the world. And one day he met a flower that was growing in a crack in the stone, a flower that was delicate, fragile, and completely unprotected. And he said, "Why do you not build a wall? Why do you not protect yourself from the wind, the rain, the trampling feet?" And the flower said, "I do not need a wall. I am the wall, I am the strength, I am the resilience, I am the ability to grow in the crack, to bloom in the adversity, to be fragile and strong at the same time. And the strength is not in the armor. The strength is in the softness. The softness is the flexibility. The flexibility is the survival, and the survival is the life." And the king was silent, and he took off his armor. He let down his walls. He allowed himself to be soft, to be vulnerable, to be fragile. And he discovered that the softness was not weakness. It was the greatest strength, a strength that could bend without breaking, a strength that could love without condition, a strength that was real. And the twist is that he did not lose his kingdom. He gained a new kind of kingdom, a kingdom that was not built on walls but on connection. And he said, "The armor was a cage. The softness is the key, and the key is the strength, and the strength is the love, and the love is the life." The seventh story is a story of a woman who was the most brilliant poet in the world. She could weave words into tapestries of meaning. She could capture the essence of the human heart in a single stanza. And she was admired. She was studied. She was the voice of her generation. But she was also a prisoner because she was terrified of the silence that followed the last word, the silence that was the void from which all words emerged. And she spent her life filling the silence with words, with more and more words, with endless cascades of language. And she was successful. She was the mistress of the word, but she was also empty because the words were a mask that hid the silence that was the source, the silence that was the truth. And one day she met a man who was mute, a man who could not speak, a man who communicated through his presence. And she said, "How do you live without words?" And he said, "I live in the silence, and the silence is not empty. The silence is full. It is full of presence, full of connection, full of the essence of being, and the words are the shadows. The silence is the light, and the light is the truth, and the truth is the freedom, and the freedom is the life." And she was silent, and she stopped writing. She sat in the silence, and she listened. And she heard the music of the silence, the music that was deeper than any poem. And the twist is that she did not stop writing. She started writing from the silence, and her poetry became transcendent. It became a channel for the ineffable. And she said the words were a cage. The silence is the key, and the key is the presence, and the presence is the life. The eighth story is a story of a king who was the most generous king in the world. He gave away his wealth, his possessions, his time, his energy, and he was loved. He was adored. He was the father of his people. But he was also a prisoner because he was terrified of receiving, terrified of being indebted, terrified of being vulnerable to the generosity of others. And he spent his life giving, giving, giving. And he was successful. He was the master of giving, but he was also empty because the giving was a mask that hid his fear of receiving, his fear of being seen as needy, his fear of being human. And one day he met a beggar who was also the most generous person in the world. And the beggar said, "You have given everything, but you have received nothing." And the receiving is the gift. The receiving is the connection. The receiving is the love, and the love is the freedom, and the freedom is the life. And the king was silent, and he stopped giving. He started receiving. He allowed himself to be held, to be loved, to be seen. And he discovered that the receiving was not weakness. It was the greatest strength, a strength that could accept, that could trust, that could love. And the twist is that he did not stop giving, but he gave out of fullness, not emptiness, and he said, the giving was a cage, the receiving is the key, and the key is the connection. And the connection is the love, and the love is the life. The ninth story is a story of a man who was the most fearless man in the world. He had faced armies, he had crossed deserts, he had sailed uncharted seas, and he was a legend. He was a hero. He was the embodiment of courage, but he was also a prisoner because he was terrified of the fear itself, terrified of feeling fear, terrified of the vulnerability that came with it. And he spent his life suppressing his fear, denying his fear, conquering his fear, and he was successful. He was the master of fear, but he was also empty because the fearlessness was a mask that hid the fear that was the source of his humanity. And one day he met a child who was afraid of the dark, a child who was weeping in the corner, and he said, "Why do you weep? There is nothing to fear. The dark is just the absence of light." And the child said, "The dark is not nothing. The dark is something. The dark is the unknown, and the unknown is the fear. And the fear is the feeling, and the feeling is the life. And you have been so afraid of the fear that you have killed the feeling, and the feeling is the life." And the man was silent, and he sat with the child in the dark, and he felt the fear. He felt it in his chest, in his stomach, in his heart. And he wept not from fear, but from relief, because he had finally allowed himself to feel, and the feeling was the freedom, and the freedom was the life. And the twist is that he did not become less brave. He became more human. And he said, the fearlessness was a cage, the fear is the key, and the key is the feeling, and the feeling is the life. The 10th story is a story of a village that was built on a lie that was told so many times that it had become the truth. And the lie was that the village was built on solid ground, but it was not. It was built on the back of a giant beast, a beast that was sleeping. A beast that had been sleeping for 1,000 years, and the people of the village lived their lives, they built their houses, they raised their children, they made their art, and they never knew that they were living on a sleeping giant. And one day, the giant stirred. It rolled over and the village crumbled and the people were terrified. They were confused, they were lost, and they asked, "What happened?" And a wise woman said, "The village was built on a lie, and the lie was the belief that the ground was solid, but the ground was never solid. The ground was always the giant, and the giant is the truth. And the truth is that we are not in control. We are not on solid ground. We are on the back of a mystery, and the mystery is the only solid thing. The mystery is the only constant. The mystery is the only home." And the people were silent, and they realized that the wise woman was right. They had been living on a lie of security, a lie of control, a lie of permanence, and the lie had been shattered, and they were free. And the twist is that they did not rebuild the village on the back of the giant. They built a village that was mobile, a village that moved with the giant, a village that was a part of the giant, a village that was not a thing but a relationship. And they said, the solid ground was a lie. The giant is the truth, and the truth is the movement. The truth is the movement. The truth is the life, and the life is the village, and the village is the giant. And the giant is us, and we are the giant, and we are the mystery, and we are the life, and we are the village, and we are the home.